Hi, my name is Jeff Rotmeyer. I'm founder and CEO of ImpactHK and also Love 21 Foundation. Today on the show, we're going to be speaking about the dangers of poverty tourism, real solutions for homelessness, and lessons learned on winning from the Down syndrome, autistic, and homeless community.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives. Brian was a new client when he came to my downtown office, and when he arrived, he was kind of a little bit flustered. He had a hard time parking, and he apparently had stood in something on his way in that kind of grossed him out. He then started talking about how my office was in the best part of the downtown core, and yet he was upset somehow about this homeless man who was sitting close to the building with a collection cup. I looked at Brian and I said, well, what was his name? He looks at me and says, who? And I said, the homeless guy. He replied and sounded quite irritated at me. I don't know. Why would I know? We don't know, do we? I have friends in San Francisco, in LA, in Portland, in New York, Seattle, and a whole bunch of other big cities who all say that homelessness is out of control in major cities. The truth is that since the 1980s, the annual national investment in affordable housing has decreased along with pension and social service benefit. Many first world countries have experienced an increasing population of declining wages. Minimum wage has certainly not kept up with inflation, and as a result, homelessness has increased, and many more are at risk of becoming homeless. There is around 500,000 individuals living in a state of homelessness in the U.S. alone. But whose problem is it to solve? If you can't trust the government to fix it, who can? Who can we say, all right, step up? I put it to you that it falls on us. It falls on us as leaders. But that as leaders, we actually need to embrace the difference we can make in these, quote, othered communities. Moreover, we can do this in a way that allows us to help or assist others and do it with dignity, the kind of dignity that all human beings deserve. The question is, will we? So stay tuned, because that's where we're going on the next 2 episodes. I promise you it's going to be a pretty fascinating examination of something that we all maybe need to take a deeper look at. As always, we need your help in staying relevant, so please get over to wherever you tune into this show and rate, review, and subscribe. If you are a regular listener, a big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. We are honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. By the way, in case you are curious, and I know you are, I'm Dov Baron, and I'm your host, here to assist you tapping into the one thing in your business that changes everything by transforming meaning into action. Curious to know more? Simply go to dovbaron.com. That's DOVBARON.com. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. Homelessness is epidemic. The last time the global survey was attempted, it was by the United Nations back in 2005. That's a long time ago. An estimated 100 million people were homeless worldwide then. It's definitely increased by it since then. As many as 1.6 billion people lack adequate housing, according to Habitat in 2015. If you are not in a situation of being homeless or even close to it, it may seem an unsolvable problem. That has very little to do with those of us who are in the business world. But is that true? I put it to you that it's not. Let's find out, because our guest for the next 2 episodes is Jeff Rotmeyer. Jeff is originally from my adopted hometown of Vancouver, Canada. That being said, We didn't know each other when he lived here. You see, Jeff has spent the last 16 years in Hong Kong, where he founded two different charities on the same day. Jeff Rotmeyer is the founder and CEO of ImpactHK, a charity transforming the lives of those experiencing homelessness in Hong Kong. ImpactHK started with just a few individuals, aimed to show kindness to those in need, and has grown into a humanitarian movement involving over 10,000 volunteers who've helped more than 400 individuals to get off the streets. Jeff is also the founder and CEO of Love 21 Foundation, a charity supporting Down syndrome and the autistic community with sport and nutrition programs. Love 21 supports over 260 families with holistic programs that strive to give neurodiverse communities the very best opportunities to reach their full potential. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and help me to welcome the man who truly embodies what it means to be a servant leader, Mr. Jeff Rotmeyer! Welcome, Jeff.
What an intro. Yeah, thanks. It's great to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. What you're doing is important work. So let me ask you, in the context of leadership development, you know, you're doing some very different kind of leadership out there. What is it that we as generally in leadership are not paying enough attention to that we need to pay far more notice to and bring the spotlight to?
Yeah, I mean, I am hearing it more and more that how important kindness is. I'd have to answer that with kindness. You know, I think it's something that people are starting to understand more and more of how important it is, especially in the workplace and with leadership. But it's not so easy to do, because you kind of have to challenge really in being a kind leader, is you kind of have to also make sure you're not, you know, a whipping bag and who gives a yes to everything, and you're so lovely and kind to everyone, because you want to have a staff that perform and they understand that they have to push. Right. But yeah, I think, you know, who would want to work for a leader? Who would want to work for a boss or an employer that you know doesn't care for you? At the end of the day, that's got to be the most important aspect.
But the work you're doing is about kindness that extends far beyond the workforce. So I'm going to ask you for a definition of kindness in the context of, you know, okay, I'm a boss, I'm a leader, I am being kind to those that I am employing or serving. But then I go out into the world. What's the definition of kindness that I need to carry with me in the context of what it is you're doing?
Well, I think, you know, it sounds a bit cliche again, you know, treating people how you'd like to be treated. I think, you know, at the end of the day, nobody's going to have the perfect definition of kindness or the perfect way of showing kindness to somebody. But we kind of keep those basic principles of, you know, being respectful and caring. And especially when you're working with a community experiencing homelessness, we see, you know, the way that community are treated, sometimes condescendingly, like you're the savior standing over there, like over them, like you're the angel and they're the person being helped, and they feel the weight of that judgment, and you feel like you're being so kind, but you know, sometimes you're actually forcing that individual to have a conversation with you just because they're hungry. So, you know, you're trying to be kind, but is it, you know?
That's a really interesting point. And you and I talked about this in a previous conversation. And I think it's really worth exploring because, you know, we see a lot of this, I'm going to call it bullshit charity or bullshit kindness, which is, you know, I'm going to take a selfie of myself feeding the homeless person or whatever it might be. Or as you say, forcing a conversation on a person who maybe doesn't want to talk to you. Talk to us about how you got to understand that, how you got to understand that that's not the solution. You know, because I think it's fairly natural. I don't mean that people are just assholes who are trying to have a conversation with a homeless person. I think that many of them are genuinely motivated by kindness. But what got you to realize that that was an imposition? What got you to realize that that was maybe stripping dignity away somehow?
Yeah, it's been a massive learning experience, you know, but on the streets,
Sure.
you know, working with this community for about 8 years now, you know, I've learned a lot. We've adapted a lot, you know, because we're working with human beings outside. That's why it's always very important. We're not defining them as homeless people, right? They're just people experiencing homelessness.
Yes.
And I think oftentimes people go out there and they feel like, You can give them a banana or some dollars, and that will get them on their feet, and they'll be fine, because they don't really understand how difficult it is to be in their shoes, and how hard it is to get out of that situation. You can't solve homelessness with apartments, right? Now, we've helped as a charity, yes, about 500 people off the streets now into shelter, right? But we're not a life-saving organization, so we don't save their lives. We provide opportunities that they need. And the sad thing is, we can't go on the streets and push them or convince them or persuade them to come with us. They have to take that step. But what gives them the hope to get out of that position is the real challenge. And what you find, what makes you excited about in your future is different than me. We all have different things that give us hope, but definitely hope comes from your heart. You don't get the hope to overcome a heroin addiction or severe depression or unbelievable trauma from a part-time job. What gives an individual hope? Why would anyone want to live a life without a friend, a community, purpose? These are the massive things that you have to try to, develop as an organization to give people the best chance of seeing hope in their future.
So, but did you start out there? I mean, this is what I'm trying to understand here, Jeff, is you go out there, you're living in Hong Kong. It's probably not a city that people think about homelessness in, right? I don't know if it's more hidden there than it is in other places. I've been to Hong Kong many, many times. I don't remember seeing homelessness, but I'm sure it was where I was. And so what got you to sort of recognize it, and more importantly, I'm trying to understand is what got you to recognize that the way you were approaching it was maybe inappropriate?
Yeah, I'm actually right away, the first thing I ever did was just, thankfully, I got introduced to this park, where about 100 individuals were sleeping. And at that time, I had no idea homelessness in Hong Kong was an issue. A friend introduced me to that park. We went in there, we passed out some eggs, and that's it. That was the idea. And, it struck me. It was an eye-opening experience, and one that I wanted to do again. So I had an idea to invite friends to go back with me one night a month. That was the plan. And then after, I think about 6 months, we had too many people. We had about 30, 40 volunteers, which was too many. You don't need that many people to go into a park. So, it gave me
that's a pretty great problem to have, too many
yeah.
volunteers.
Yeah, too many caring people. When people are given the opportunity to show care, they jump at it. People want purpose in their lives, right? But the key problem was, when you have 40 people going into a park, it kind of reeks of poverty tourism. And that's really the line that you have to learn very quickly. So yes, we went from doing it once a month to twice a month to 4 times, 8 times, and then soon every day. Now we do about 100 a month, this type of outreach program, in 12 different locations around Hong Kong. But yeah, that's the key. How do you eliminate the risk of poverty tourism was one of my first learning points, I would say. So how do you do that? You make sure that the group is limited in size. So you put a cap on each walk, right? You eliminate any photography, and you really educate on the importance of what to do and not do on the streets. And for me personally, I don't think the street is the place for the conversation. I don't think it's the place where we should be having conversations. I think it's a place where we walk up to people, we say hello, we pass the product, and we say goodbye. And we have cards that invite these individuals to our center. They know on the card, they see the map, they see the information of what we can do. And people come in our doors now every day. The opposite is where you stand about the person and you try to push them or convince them, and that doesn't work. And we realized that and learned that lesson very well.
What is I think that there's some really great learning in there for anybody who wants to go out into the street and to be of assistance. But what for you was the greatest learning about homelessness, particularly in Hong Kong? Because you'd lived in Vancouver before. We have homelessness,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's greater or lesser, but we have it. And then suddenly you're in a foreign place, you're in this different country, in a different environment. What's sort of the myth that maybe got busted along the way for you?
Vancouver, obviously a huge issue there because it's in your face and it's right downtown, right?
Right.
Hong Kong has a much worse homeless situation. It's just hidden homelessness. And we're talking about 3 to 4% of our population. So we're talking about incredible numbers. At a population of, roughly 8 million, just under 8 million people, we're looking at 300,000 people who are living in hidden homeless situations. Now on the streets, you'll only see, I would guess, 5,000 to 6,000 people, right? It's an attainable thing to fix on the street. But these hidden homeless situations are individuals living in cages, in coffin boxes, which is a 6 foot by 2.5 foot wide wooden box, unbreathable, right? So you have about an 800 square foot apartment, which has been divided into having 24 boxes inside. And each of those boxes charge about 300 Canadian dollars per month for that box.
Hold on.
Right.
Hold on. I want people to grasp that.
Yeah.
Because, I live in Vancouver where the rents are outrageous. You know that. The rents and the property is insane. But you're talking about people living, 24 people living in these boxes, 6 foot by 2.5 feet, in an 800 square foot apartment, paying $300 a month?
Yeah, per box, right? So
Per
that landlord,
box.
pulls in about 6K
so the landlord's
US.
making a ton of money. First of all, how are these people even affording that kind of money? I mean, it seems to me like $300 a month for a coffin apartment seems like a lot of money. How are they even coming up with that $300?
It's a good question. It is the most expensive city to live in the world, Hong Kong. The price of real estate here is crazy, right? So parking spots will typically be, it's very difficult to find any parking spot in Hong Kong for less than 500 US a month, right? So parking spots, or 500 Canadian a month, I should say, it's very hard, right? So it's a very expensive city. Social welfare is very different in Hong Kong versus Canada, right?
Yes.
And you might argue, that the high welfare allowance in Vancouver makes it very difficult for an individual to want to get out of homelessness because, they've got a lot of benefits there. Whereas in Hong Kong, they're getting roughly about $280 Canadian a month in welfare, right? In welfare allowance. So it's actually very low. So how do they afford that?
The coffin apartment.
No.
Before they even get a bite to eat,
Yeah.
or anything, even at the very basic level. So
Yeah.
You've been there 16 years. So you've been there the entire time you've been there. It's been back to Chinese Hong Kong versus British Hong Kong. When I first was there, it was British Hong Kong. It was different back in the early 80s. Is it treated different? Do you see, or do you know if it's treated differently than homelessness might be in China? Because I know in China they moved people out, they got them back and shifted them back to their own poor villages and kept them out of sight in many ways, from what I know. Is it different in Hong Kong? Is it a different situation, or how is it done there?
I don't know if there's been a change, since 97, in terms of the way that they treat these individuals outside. It's been pretty much the same strategy. I know in the time I've been there, get these individuals to go somewhere else, right? People who are in pain, people who need care, they need support, they need opportunities. They're constantly being told to go elsewhere. And that seems to be the constant government strategy, is hide this population, put the narrative that it's on them, whether they be drug users or they're by choice or laziness, those 3 common narratives that are slammed down our throat all the time. And it puts the blame on them so that they don't have to care, justifies them not having to care about this community.
Well, okay, so that's governmental or organizational. But at a people level, do you notice a difference in the way, or is it exactly the same, in the way that we in North America generally, not specifically, but generally view homeless or the homeless versus the way that the Hong Kong people see those individuals?
Totally. Yeah. I think especially in Vancouver, I mean, I hear a lot of, it's tough though. I mean, I can understand why you wouldn't want to see that community in your city or in your neighborhood. I can understand why you wouldn't want to see a huge scene of rubbish and environmental mess and people injecting in your neighborhood. It makes sense, right? But I think, we just have to understand, we need to somehow think of a solution, right? And the solution is not going to come from judging these individuals or condemning them, right? You have to focus on the solution. That's what we're trying to do here, right? And that solution is if you can find people, you can help them. If they're told to go away, you can't. And that's a big step.
Right. So now we come to the important question, and you brought it up, and it's an important question. And that is, a lot of what we think is solution is not the solution, right? As you said, handing somebody some food or $5 or whatever it is, or forcing them to have a chat with you is not really the solution. And so do you see that providing homes for these people as a solution, or is that a partial solution, or is that the wrong solution from your point of view?
Everyone deserves shelter. It's a must. I think you can't expect somebody to perform or to have ambition or to have manners while they're sleeping outside in pain, right? People need stability. They need to feel in a safe place where they can rest at night before you can expect anything from them, right? So when we help somebody into shelter, in our shelter tonight, we have about 100 people. And each of those individuals have goals, right? They have short-term goals, they have long-term goals. Short-term goals might be join our fitness class, build a resume, drink 5 cups of water each day. Very, very short-term goals. Long-term goals, reunite with my family, find my child, find a meaningful career. And every individual in our shelter should have short-term goals, long-term goals. We don't have our shelter-based program on timelines. I think that's very common. It's right. You get 3 months of shelter, you get 6 months of shelter. Now I'm trying to imagine in my life, if I'm trying to overcome a heroin addiction, trauma, complete hopelessness, and I've got a timeline of 3 months, that's a lot of pressure. Can I imagine myself overcoming that in 3 months and then getting on my feet? No, but if you've got a really good friend who's focused on helping you and empowering you to find ways to take steps forward, whether they be big steps or small steps, that's the key. We would never say to someone who's really working their tail off at trying to get over this situation, we would never say, you didn't make it in time. It just doesn't make sense. But that's why we're seeing, I think, our guys and girls, they're taking amazing steps forward because they're really focused on these progress and attacking it. They have to commit. And once you've gotten them in shelter and once you've given them this opportunity, that's where they have to kick ass. If they don't, sometimes you have to say, unfortunately, hey, I don't think we're the right charity for you. Our door's always open. You can come back and try again. But if you're going to come into this program, you have to commit and you have to really make these steps. And that's another thing that differentiates us, I think.
So you help them to set goals? Is that
right.
part of right? So that's part of what gives them hope, is that there is a goal here, and then that goal might be a daily goal, a weekly goal, but it might also be a long-term goal.
For sure. Each of our individuals have a caseworker, a social worker with them, a one-on-one, like a super friend, who's there to support, listen, and come up with ideas. One of the tough challenges, as opposed to just go through the motions of pretending that I've got shelter now, I'm going to go and do 5 job applications a week, and I'm going to keep staying in this cycle of staying in this shelter and being cared for, getting food and shelter and going through the rigmarole of just doing these motions. Instead, they're focused on, I need to attack. I've got this opportunity now. I've got shelter, I've got food support, I've got a medical program, counseling, mentorship, sport, art classes every single day. I've got a real opportunity to find purpose. And, then it's fair, I think, to expect somebody to deliver. I don't think it's fair to expect somebody to deliver while they're living at a park.
No, absolutely not. So, that's a very well structured organization you have around serving these individuals. And I know I said it in the introduction that you started the charity, and it was sort of bare bones. So how did you get to evolve it into this situation where it was like, you got to work your ass off, you've got to be part of this community, you got to show up for some kind of classes, and you've got to commit and set goals, etc. How did you get to that? Because again, I want to pull it back to the beginning where I talked about people see this as, it's not my problem, it's a societal problem and I can't fix it. But you were a member of a society and you decided to step into that. So how did you get to go, we got to do this different?
Yeah, after, when you see the need, I'm constantly thinking, okay, what's the solution? I mean, that in my head, I'm always, okay, what's the solution? I would not have started it as a charity if it was just simply going into a park and passing out food. People need to eat. It's super important. But that was not enough for me to say, this needs to be a charity because we can create something, But when we were first able to help, first 3 people off the streets into shelter before we became a charity, I realized, wow, we can actually do this. And I can understand, I just got a very good lesson on the importance of friendship, and how important that is and how we all need a friend. See, I think charities and also organizations and people, we make this mistake of pretending that the solution for another human being is something that we know would not be good enough for ourselves. I know in my life, not having a friend would be a pretty crap life, right? Mm-hmm. We all need a friend. We all need a community. We all need purpose, right? And those are really the most important aspects of helping another human being. Everyone, of course, needs shelter, food. Everybody needs that, clothing, right? That's basic. That's what we're all basic, right? But the most important aspects are those other parts. So that's what really makes us, and our success rate, in the success rate that these individuals, I should say, are finding in not just getting off the streets, but in continuing their lives and finding independence is unbelievable. And I think we'll just continue to set records in that regard.
So, these things are, they're not 0 to 100, nothing is. And it's easy to go, well, you've helped almost 500 people, blah, 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 to get off the streets. Okay, that's fine. But there's usually along the way many moments of, I'm throwing in the towel. I mean, this is just, I'm banging my head on the wall here. I can't get to where I want to go. Can you give me an example of one of those moments for you when you just felt like it wasn't going to work?
Yeah, I haven't had, no, I haven't, because you've got to understand, going back to the start as well, I never wrote a business plan for this charity, right? There was never a business plan. We are agile, and that's a huge strength. We're client-centered. We focus on the individual and how can we help? We dip our toe into something. It might be a good program, but if it's not great, we can step away, we can shift, and we're constantly shifting. We've learned so much. And now we're, getting more solid. We're, just turned 5 years old as a charity now. And we're over a $3 million US annual budget. So we're a big organization. We have more than 50 full-time staff. 40% of our full-time staff used to sleep on the streets as well. So it's an incredible, that's an incredible model. Yeah. We've got
fantastic. So go the other way then, Jeff. What was do you have a story or an experience of somebody who made you go, it's working, I got it? Like we're on the right path. I mean, I'm sure you've got many, but there's probably one that what I'm looking for is one that touched your heart and made you go, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I've so many. I've got so many. This has been an incredible experience. I'm so grateful for, honestly. But, one story really jumps out because it was a real learning example for me, but actually one of my first ever friends on the streets was this nice lady in her late 40s who, had a kind of a normal life in Hong Kong. She was a housewife, in love with her husband, teenage son, and her husband died. Her husband died in a shock accident, broke her heart. That kind of started to lead to, I couldn't imagine the pain of that. And, that kind of led down a downward spiral to resulting in kind of a broken relationship with her son. And her son ran away from home. And then she couldn't find her son for many, many years. She had another fall down after that. She tried to get into work, but in the factory had an accident, lost half of a foot. So it was just constant. And then, when I met her, she was living on a footbridge in Hong Kong, which is a shockingly common place to live for homeless communities, is these footbridges, because you have some privacy. There were 24 people sleeping on that footbridge, and she was there using heroin every day to find peace. So there she was, and I started a pretty good relationship with her, in large part because she spoke English and she wanted to talk. If people want to talk, you don't say like, no, I don't want no talking on the street. No, if people want to talk, that's different, sure. Right? So we would have conversations and she would share a bit about her story. But, one day I was up there and I was shocked because I actually saw her wearing a work uniform for the first time. And I was like, it was a cleaning uniform. I was like, you got a job? What's going on? And she's like, yeah, I've got this job and I'm very excited. I start tomorrow. And she was just wearing it already. And I was like, okay. You could see the buzz, right? And you're like, wow. Like, I was shocked because I know this lady's using heroin every day. She's using 85 milligrams of methadone every single day as well. She's in incredible pain and she's sleeping on a bridge. But, this other charity gave her this opportunity and she jumped at it. And she was able to do the job for, I think, 3 or 4 days. And then the next day after that, I saw her on the bridge, high, passed out on heroin, and she had to quit. Saw her the day after, and, we spoke about it. And, she just physically couldn't make the journey. She really wanted it, but she physically couldn't make the commute. And it just pissed me off so much because I thought, why on earth did anybody think that this was a solution of offering this lady a job while she's battling addiction and living on a bridge? But this charity that, love her, care for her, want to help her, they even thought that the job was the easy solution, the quick fix, right? And when she couldn't keep that job, she couldn't sustain it, obviously, she was devastated and she hated herself, and she tried to end her life. She tried to kill herself because she thought, I'll never make it off this bridge. That was my chance to get off this bridge, to find my son, to have a life again. And when she didn't make it, she was devastated, and, thankfully she didn't succeed, in ending her life there, but very soon after that, the government came in and they cleared everybody off that bridge and they shut it down, and she disappeared. Now, when I don't see individuals there, I know there's 3 choices, right? They're either in jail, in the hospital, or dead. And it happens a lot. We see a lot of death on the streets, as you do in Vancouver. And, yep. She was arrested, I guess, thankfully. And, 2 years later after that, beautiful moment. She walked into our center. I got a message saying, Jeff, she's here. I was like, what? Oh my gosh, it was so emotional. She joined our community helper program, which is aimed at having 1 hour of purpose-driven work, like boiling eggs, distributing lunches per day, counseling, mentorship, and sports. And, she joined our sports and art classes. She joined every class we have. I'm very proud as a Canadian. We even have a curling class, so it's no ice, but we actually have a curling class, but with little stainless steel balls on the bottom of the rock. But right. She joined every single class. She flourished. She overcame her addiction, and we just hired her full time. She now works in our kitchen, and she comes in every single day. And she just gave a sharing a couple of days ago to our whole staff about her experience and how much she values this opportunity and the purpose that she has. And I watch her. She comes in every day and she just loves getting into that kitchen. She's so happy. And again, we didn't save her life. We gave her a real opportunity. And then she kicked ass and she did it. And I just couldn't be more proud of her.
It's a great example. Thank you for that. I love that. I appreciate that story because it's a great example of somebody genuinely doing something good, i.e. giving the opportunity for a job. But, one of the things I talk about when I work with organizations is be cautious that you're not looking for the answer to a symptom rather than the answer to the real problem. And although offering this person a job was a wonderful thing to do, the consideration of, well, is this person, first of all, going to be able to get to the job? Just actually get there. Are they going to be able to get there and have a shower and smell okay after sleeping on a bridge? Are they going to be able to handle it from an addiction point of view? Like, there's so many levels and depth to it. And, again, I want to praise these people who do these things, because I do believe that most of the people are doing these things genuinely out of the goodness of their heart, but they're often poorly thought through. And so I really appreciate you sharing that to show us an example that we've got to be more willing than here's $5 or here's $10 or, how can I really get involved here at a deeper level? So thank you for that. We are already at the end of part 1 of our show. Before we come back, we're going to be back in one click for those of you who are listening here. But we want to make sure that you know more about Jeff and his organizations, and how you can reach out and be part of this. And by the way, Jeff, just to make sure for everybody understands, you don't have to be in Hong Kong to assist what it is you're doing. Is that correct?
No. We've got a website. So yeah, all good. ImpactHK.org is the charity we're discussing here, and working with homelessness. That's ImpactHK.org. You can find me on Instagram. That's probably the best way if you want to find me personally. The Guest Room HK. So the Guest Room HK. But yeah, it's great to be here with you. I look forward to another good chat.
Okay, we'll be back in part 2 of the show for our delicious conversation with Jeff Rotmeyer and ImpactHK. We'll make sure that all of the URLs are posted in the show notes. If you didn't catch them, don't worry. Just go to the show notes and they'll be right there for you. We're going to be back in one click. So stay curious, my friends. Stay curious.